everybody, welcome to an episode of In My Opinion. My name is John.
My name is Lester.
Oh, am I supposed to introduce myself?
Yes, you do.
Okay. I'm Tammy.
As you can see, okay, thank you so much for joining us again. As you can see, my background is very different. Tammy's background is very different. But somehow they all look like Lester's background because yes, phase 2 and then we're all out here, okay?
Finally.
And
unfortunately, the first people I meet is you, John.
You are very lucky, okay? That's what I'm saying. Okay, but today we have Tammy with us. Okay, y'all might not know who she is, but she is here to enlighten us on a few topics.
Yes.
So before we go on, Tammy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay. Oh my gosh. Where do I start? Well, I'm 22. So I'm a environmental studies major. That's why I study. And for the most part, the reason why Lester reached out to me is because I post about a lot of activisty stuff on Instagram, ranging from a bunch of different topics like environmentalism, social justice issues, everything in between.
Yeah.
And one time I talked about influencer culture.
Yes.
And I actually found it on like Instagram. Her handle is @littleofgirl. We'll link it below. So the reason why we found it is because like some of our friends actually like reposted it. And I decided that, that's quite a cool topic. So I actually contacted her in February when we released the first IMO episode. And now we are at episode 20.
Yeah, and then the world went to shit. And that's why we're here. And by the way, in case you didn't catch what Lester said, we're at episode 20.
20, guys.
Give us 20 claps, man.
That blows my mind. Okay, so now today we'll be here to talk about influencer culture. We actually did a topic like this in episode 4. I went to search it up just now. Episode 4 with Celeste, we actually talked about whether influencers should be
whether they have a
expected
responsibility
to do more.
Yeah.
And actually, Tammy and I actually had a conversation over Insta story.
Yeah.
Instagram.
Insta story.
Yeah, it's okay, bochio.
Instagram
It's okay, that's
DMs. We actually had a convo over Instagram DMs about like this topic.
Yes.
And we disagreed.
Okay. Actually, honestly, right, first things first, since Lester, you watch back that episode, right?
Yeah.
Has your opinion changed?
No way.
No, huh?
I don't think it has.
So what is your opinion?
Okay, wait, no. It changed from the episode.
Okay, what?
So like the episode, I played the quote unquote devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Like I said that like influencers should be expected to do
Right,
more
right.
because like whatever you have to like you have more influence and everything, you should
yes.
use it better. Like
use your platform.
like
so
don't
it's a
sit around and chill,
responsibility.
Yeah,
okay.
correct. But then after a while I thought about it, and after talking to you and
Yes.
Celeste, then I was like, actually quite true. Like cannot part of the reason why it's called doing good is because it's not expected.
Yes.
And you cannot expect good things, people to do good things, because then it won't be good. I don't know. But it's a bit weird.
Okay.
So
that means your answer has changed.
It has changed, yeah.
Okay. So if I remember correctly, my opinion was that like influencers do not have a responsibility to advocate for certain blah blah blah, that kind of thing, right?
Do you want to know something damn meta now?
What?
You're wearing the same sweater in the episode.
Are you for real? Are you for real?
Yeah.
This is from Uniqlo. You can get it. I don't know what the price is anymore because I haven't been out in a long time and is Uniqlo even open? Okay, but that beside the point, right? Your answer has changed. My answer has slightly changed as well.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, snap. So
Yeah.
what's your opinion? Okay,
So
wait.
so why don't we get Tammy's opinion first, because Tammy's a new
Actually,
addition.
I want to hear what you guys have to say first.
Okay, perfect. So for Lester, right, you are of the opinion that yes, influencers are not necessarily of the required, to have the responsibility to advocate for use their platform for social causes, right? Yeah. My initial opinion was like that, but it has changed. Okay, it has changed to I would say that I agree to a certain extent that they are responsible, and I'll justify why. Okay, so firstly, like I mentioned, we all always assume that everyone is in this meritocratic society. People are there because of, I don't know, it could be very simple things like their good looks and stuff like that, and it's through their own merit that they get there, right?
Yeah.
And that was my initial understanding of this. But having understood the situation in Singapore a little bit better, I am about to change that answer slightly, because I believe that like a lot of times, right, in order for you to get where you are and then think that it's fully meritocratic, right, it's because you have a certain privilege that makes you forget that there are underprivileged people that even given the same resources will not reach the same level as you. And as somebody who from that kind of social standing, right, even if you do not fight for people to be at the same level of privilege as you, right, you ought not to be selling the thought that you can do what I do. Yeah, and that's where my answer has changed. So is there a responsibility for them to use their platform to advocate for social causes? Not all the time, it depends on what topic it is about. But at the same time, it is also their responsibility to help people recognize that it is truly it is meritocratic, but it's not completely meritocratic, because there are people who will never be able to be where they are. And hence this platform can be used for that kind of privilege checking and that kind of social cause in that sense.
So in a way, the reason why they are expected is because they made it. They
Yes.
quote unquote made it.
Yes.
And because
and
of,
they made it in a system that benefits them.
Correct.
Okay.
True.
okay.
You understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I would say for all of us, we're very privileged and very lucky people,
Yeah.
right? That we live in a certain lifestyle, we have a certain standard of living that is also as a result of a system that benefits and nurtures this type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And as as someone who comes from this kind of privileged background, we need to recognize that, and then use whatever platform we have to try to level that baseline privilege playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the responsibility comes in.
Okay.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, here's the thing.
What can I say? Circuit breaker has made me
You're
smarter.
woke as hell, man. IMO has made you woke. But like, oh wow.
Same sweater, different man. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Think about what I just said. I know a lot of people will be riled up by this.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, by this statement that I mentioned about how everyone's privilege is slightly different, and then our responsibility falls on influencers and stuff like that. But I feel this is something that we don't think about enough, and it's very easily forgotten because of our own privilege.
Okay, here's the thing. I told Tammy this before. My
Yes.
opinion about this, right, is like completely unintellectual
Yes.
in nature. It's
yeah.
completely emotional.
Yeah.
And I cannot really fully articulate why I have this opinion.
Okay.
But I think it can be boiled down to, if it's expected, it is not good.
Right.
That is the fact that you said it do good, it means it's not expected.
Right.
And like, it's just, unfortunately, like the whole point about freedom of action and freedom of will is that you're allowed to do good,
Correct.
but at the same time, that also means you're allowed to do bad. You can't have one only. You have to have both of the. You can't have one side of the story. You have to have
That
both
is
sides.
true. I think that is true. But at the same time, I feel that there can be work that can be done, right, in promoting the right thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, right, in order to promote the right thing, right, you don't promote that, hey, you see, I made it. When actually there are people who cannot. It's like the very old and shallow argument that people use, why don't you just work harder?
It's just stupid. Okay, to be fair,
That is not, because the playing field is not level, and I think that is where the responsibility lies. It may not be like I never go and support this person's mental health issues, right? Because blah blah blah. But it may be a simple thing like social economic standing. All these things require a lot more deeper thought than we initially figure.
Okay. So tell me, what do you feel?
There's like a lot to go off on.
Yeah, it is. No, but like, okay, honestly, in your opinion, if we bring it all back to the initial question, right, about influencers and people, in certain levels of society, right, do you think there's a responsibility for them to use their platform or whatever they have to advocate for stuff?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think, if I were to think about it as like, it's not just about influencers with big platforms, but also like generally the onus is on people in general to do good, right?
Yeah.
So that's the starting point. The starting point is that you would expect that people, no matter whether they have a big platform or not, right, they are supposed to do good. They're supposed to care about other people. And that's like the fundamental sort of value that I work off on.
Right.
And I assume that everyone generally agrees that that's a good thing.
Mm.
And therefore, somebody with a larger platform, by extension, would have a greater responsibility to impact other people around them. Because I feel like the number of people you impact, it can't be negated. Like you can't ignore the fact that you have 10,000 people watching your stories and watching your posts and being influenced by what you say and what the culture that you're part of. And a lot of times I think I don't know, I feel like it might be semi-offensive to say this, but like I feel that generally influencers subscribe to and promote the same culture, and it's sort of like it's an echo chamber of influencers talking about the same thing. And in this sort of really capitalistic world
Right.
and very individualistic world, we tend to promote not great values, right? And a lot of influencers with bigger platforms don't talk about social issues or just generally like issues other than buying things, which is like the vast majority. Like I think most influencers fall into that category of just influencing other people to buy things. And you know, it's not very often that you have influencers who are authentic. And I think when you have someone who is authentic, it's very hard to, you know, I think it's hard to how do I put it? Like when you are trying to be authentic, it's hard to not care about social issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, I think generally everybody across the board, you know, if you talk about it to them, you wouldn't disagree that there are problems and that these things need to be talked about and that people with larger platforms should talk about them.
Also, the fact that they are aware that these things are problems means that to be authentic, they should be talking about it on their platforms, regardless of whether or not they are quote unquote influencers.
I think it's not like should, but more like, well, I guess should also, but more what I'm saying is more that if you're really being yourself, you would be concerned about these things. But then again, I
Okay.
think there's a difference between super rich, super like privileged people and then like not so
run-of-the-mill
rich
people.
influencers. You know, like there's like huge differences between those tiers of like someone with like 1 million followers versus someone with 100K followers versus someone with 10K followers, right? You're talking to different people with different levels of like social economic status.
Yes.
Yeah. So are they all? So is the 1 million supposed to do more because of the higher followers?
Yeah, I mean, and also
Okay.
because I think when you have 1 million followers, like you're probably at a level of privilege that a lot of other people aren't at, and therefore you're obligated to give back because you have gained from that society. Like John was saying earlier about how people who are at that level are at that level because they have gained from a society that benefits them.
Yes. And I think it's important to also note that, like, you know, despite having benefit from the society, yes, there is definitely their own hard work and stuff like that. But I think a lot of times the hardest thing is to recognize that in spite of this hard work, there is something else that propelled you.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very difficult thing to admit because, like, it feels like, you know, there's so much that you toiled for and there's so much that got you to where you are. Nobody is discounting that. It's just that, like, in order for you to even get there, right, you are in a what is called a more ideal environment than someone else. And as a result of that, right, you have a responsibility as someone who has done better, assuming that you want to that you're supposed to do good, right? To uplift the people who do not have as good a circumstance. So, like, for example, maybe we talk about finance, for example. If you come from a family that is all banking mind oriented kind, you know, you end up learning faster and then you become a top banker. You cannot talk to the other banker for not being as good as you, even though you don't know how much effort they put in versus the environment that they grew up in. And that is the main crux of it. But of course, okay, this is operating under the assumption that everybody is here to do good. That everybody is here to quote unquote must be a good person.
No, but I think that's a good assumption to make, right? As in, like,
It
that's
is.
a fair assumption to make, actually.
It is, but like a lot of times it's very easy to think you want to be a good person, right? But when actually you are the indifferent person.
Okay.
Either because you don't notice or either because the effort to acknowledge this is something that undermines everything that you believe in. And it's very hard to change that mindset. It takes a long time to change that mindset. What if you know it's like what if one day someone came to you and told you that, like, you know, everything you build, this channel, all that kind of thing, right? Right? It's not because of your hard work. That feels very unfair to hear, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is the crux of the issue here, because a lot of people in privilege, this is something that is very hard. This is the hardest hurdle to go over because it feels like an attack on their hard work.
On their, on their own abilities.
On what got them to where they are. But that is not the point. And this is
But-
why it always sounds like social justice warrior bitching, that kind of thing. Very, very why they always so angry, why they don't chill. But they need to recognize that in a society like in any society, I don't say a society, but in any society, someone who has the privilege to tell people to chill, right, needs to understand how come they can be in the position when they can tell people to chill.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is what I mean by like privilege. And as a result of that privilege, that they have a responsibility to uplift people, so that privilege can be as level as possible. But beyond that, okay, personally, I still believe that they do not have a responsibility to use their platform to talk about social topics, social issues that don't directly
They don't resonate with lah.
yeah, because I feel like there is no point in being like, once again, I feel this comes back to authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to just talk about something that you don't know anything about, and then because someone mentioned or because you feel like you have to, you know.
I mean, I also feel that there is, like, I think we have to see like the irony in that, like having that choice is also like that, having that choice of not promoting or not publicly speaking about social issues is a result of being privileged enough, and like I think when you talk about authenticity, like then there's also a need for influencers, I guess, in that position to come to terms with why they are in that position, like you mentioned, like doing the whole privilege check thing.
Yeah.
And then then you wouldn't have issues that you don't resonate with, because I think it's very hard to argue that anyone wouldn't resonate with social justice issues, because usually I think we're at that point in society right now collectively, given this whole like pandemic, Black Lives Matter, and all these things that are happening, right? We all have collectively come to a place where we realize that social justice issues is not a niche interest. It's not like a thing that, I think before this maybe it wasn't in front of people's minds, but at this point I think it's very hard to ignore that social justice issues is about life and death. It's about things that are like, it's like you can't say you don't, it's not like a yes and no issue. It's not like a personal preference issue. It's like you can't disagree with racism. You can't disagree with, things like that.
Yeah.
And like, I think, on the point of like being a good person, I also feel like, I agree, like people need to stop being so obsessed with being a good person. And coming back to the whole like do good thing, right? Like I think it's really like, what is good? Like why is it that the things that we ask for, as activists or as like advocates, right? Like why is it that these things are considered like good? And why are we so obsessed with being good? Is it, do we have to like redefine what being good means? Is it not just being a decent human being? Yeah. And also like I think being obsessed with being a good person is also, which is something I realized recently, like being super obsessed and hung up over being a good person actually like inhibits your growth and inhibits your understanding of privilege. Because if you are really caught up with trying to understand these issues because you want to be a good person, like then you cannot, you can't acknowledge privilege in its entirety. Because if you really want to acknowledge that, then you have to understand that because you exist in a society and because you are born into a certain sort of level of privilege, you are therefore not necessarily a good person, because you might be doing harm even though you're not doing anything actively, right? Yeah.
I think that's a good point though. Like the whole, I think, okay, I said this before, I think to a lot of people, I think being good these days is like very difficult to do. And it's like, as we go on, it's increasingly more and more difficult. And it's not because it has always, it was easier last time, it's just because like now we are more aware of things that are inherently wrong that we didn't realize before.
Yes.
Like in the past, being good was like, I share food with my neighbors and A+ solid guy.
Yes.
But like nowadays it's like share food with the neighbors, but actually like the neighbor, like you might be unfortunately doing some stereotype with the neighbor. Let's say the neighbor is Indian, and you only share like Indian food with the neighbor, but like don't share other type of food. That is that racism. Suddenly like a lot of other things like come into play, and it's like a lot more things to think about. And I think that turns off a lot of people because they are so caught up with like trying to do the good thing or do the right thing. And so what Tammy said really does make a lot of sense.
I think this requires an extra level of deep thinking, because you need to understand what this implies is that even though you do what is a morally good action, right, you need to there's also other factors, right, that may that may not be such a good thing to have done. You know what I mean? And this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this is what this entire conversation is about, and why this conversation will basically never end, because this is a very complicated situation that has like that is at all tiers of society, you know, from the individual all the way up to governing bodies, the countries and stuff like that. And like why people are advocating for a change at this kind of thing is because once again, as much as I don't like to admit it, but no country or no society in the world will ever be a utopia, which means these type of problems will never end.
Ah, yeah.
I don't believe there will be an end. There can only be a better place.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And that's why I feel that like on the coming back to the initial topic about whether influencers are responsible, you
Yeah.
know, I would say the main responsibility lah, besides using their platform, all that kind of thing, is to internalize that all these problems are existing. And I feel that if anything, okay, the responsibility is for them to use their platform as a place for people to discuss this type of topics, to let them know, to let whoever is their viewer also know that, hey, at minimum, even though I cannot necessarily do anything about it right now, right, I recognize that there's a problem and I'm willing to talk about it. And I think that one is very, very important, because a lot of times these issues are very, very nuanced. They feel small in comparison to your other things. And then that's why people can just, hey, chill lah, you know, don't so sensitive. But for all you know, this small thing that feels small to you, right, may have been someone's everyday.
Yeah, their lived realities for
Yeah.
sure.
Right? And that's where I would say the first responsibility comes in. If you have a platform or like a stage to mention certain things, right? I feel at bare minimum, you invite people onto that stage. You know, invite them to bring in topics like this to discuss. Topics that actually require more change instead of that brand new coffee or brand new bag that you bought. As you know, in terms of priority, when we break it down like this, they're not equal. You know, and that's where the argument comes in, right?
I think wait. But let's say, but the thing is that you don't expect. Let's say does it. Okay, let's rewind it. So as an influencer, let's say you're an influencer with influence.
Let's say
with let's say 1 million.
Right.
What if you just talk about it with your friends and not use your platform? Then is that?
I mean, I think
okay.
I think it's on the individual level. Like if you don't have a big platform, then like I think that that problem is not it's okay if you don't like be active and loud about it, because sometimes a lot of these things require internal conversations with yourself and people around you, and to like really unpack all these like complex ideas. And you don't necessarily have to always be shouting about it, right? But I do think that someone with a bigger platform is, just by virtue of the fact that they have a big platform, it's important for them to make sure that they know that how do I say it?
Like the reason why you got this big platform is because of the social issues that you should be talking about, which is like racism, which is like all these other.
I mean, I don't know if I
problems.
would make that argument. I suppose I would, but I also think that, you know, just because you have a big platform, you have to be like loud about these things. Like you have to talk about things that matter, because if not, like we expect people like teachers and politicians who have big platforms, right? They have platforms, but just not the same platforms that you would think. Like it's not the same as social media, but they have a big platform, right? They speak to a lot of people, and we expect them who speak to a lot of people to be at a
advocate the right things.
We hold them to a moral standard, right? And so why not social media influencers? What's so different about them that you would hold them to a different standard and say, oh, it's okay, you have 1 million followers, but that's your choice, you know? But then the argument wouldn't extend to teachers and politicians, would it?
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, my thinking is a little bit simpler. It's the fact that, like, as let's say social media influencers, right? You are the winners in a system that is like that, right? I feel that as a social media influencer, the responsibility would lie on you then to identify that I am a winner in this system, but there are losers in this system, and why, you know, this system does not benefit the losers. And that will be where the responsibility lies. And when you start to think of this, I'm a winner in this versus there are losers in this, right? You will start to realize that you are winners in a lot of things, even as a regular person. And then what's the difference between a regular person versus a social media influencer is that you have a social media presence. So if you're a winner in a lot of things, sometimes because of someone else being the loser in that field, right? Don't you think there is like a moral responsibility for you to explain that, like, I'm a winner, I'm grateful for where I am. I'm very grateful for where I am, but at the same time, right, I understand that this is not 100% me.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are these people that you all need to take care of. And I think that's at the center of this discussion.
Okay. Here's the thing. Okay. I hear what you guys are saying.
But hard to understand, right?
No. I understand because
okay.
like that's what I think also. Like from young, my parents have been telling me that whatever you have is not because of you only.
Yeah.
It's because
that's
like.
That's not what I've been told.
Or for you?
No, yeah.
Or they said that because you work hard, then you did well.
I mean, I think meritocracy is very embedded in people's Singaporeans like parents' mindsets. It's because that's what they grew up with. That's what they've always been taught and told.
Especially if they came from a rags to riches kind of thing, right? It's very easy to understand that, like, I became this because I do this. But there are people who did not benefit from that. I
don't know. Okay, maybe just my parents. So like my parents really just like they tell me like, whatever you have is not just cause like, my family is well to do.
Yeah.
The fact that we even have a whole room to do this nonsense is incredible, which is just crazy. But like, so like they do tell me that, and they do give back their own way. They donate a lot and all that. So like from young, I've been told that. So it's not that I don't hear what you guys are saying, because I agree.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's why like I'm doing IMO, right? I won't be doing IMO, right? Like, because I understand that I've been lucky, But at the same time, I don't know why. It's just the fact that I cannot bring myself to say that
people are
responsible. I have to expect them.
Like you must, right?
Yeah. Just something just in my brain just doesn't click.
I think the main issue here is this is also a point of like it's a difficult point for me to foot. I'm still I would say maybe a little bit more subconsciously I'm more on the fence with this. But why I feel that like there is like a certain level of even not responsibility, there's a certain pressure on these people, right? Is because like we recognize that this system has winners and losers.
Yeah.
And a system like this that has been continuing for a long time will have built up a lot more losers. And as a result of that, right, we really, really need to try to uplift these people who did not benefit as much from the system.
I agree. Yeah.
And we talk about winners and losers at the two extreme. And what about people who are somewhere in the middle? But somewhere in the middle below average. Then that one is it's a very difficult existence as well. And you cannot just attribute the successes and celebrate the successes without uplifting the people, right, who are beaten down by the system. And I think that's where the pressure comes in. Maybe responsibility or expectation might be too harsh a word for me. Okay, I don't know how other people think, but it might be too much for me. But I still feel that there has to be this little bit of a push to try to always be a more uplifting society.
Yeah, correct.
I agree. And we are actually going to take a little short break, and then we'll come back after the camera break.
Yeah, because our camera only can record 30 minutes. Okay. Alright, so Lester P finished ready.
I did pee.
And we're back.
There's nothing wrong with going to the
toilet.
I feel so maligned and
Okay. So just to catch people up again, okay, we were talking about social issues and whether social media influencers have expectations / responsibility to be talking about them.
Yes.
Okay. Which brings us to our next point.
We're actually following the episode 4 structure. So if you guys want a throwback episode, go and watch the episode and compare what John said and what I said in that episode and what Celeste said as well to what we are saying right now. Because I think some of the things have changed over 16 weeks.
Yes.
So
we have character development.
We have COVID also.
So the question is like, if let's say influencers do advocate, let's say they chose that, okay, I'm going to advocate for something.
Yes.
Is there a way to do it? The right is
like
there
a method?
Is there a method to do it? Is there a wrong way to do it? I think that's a better answer.
Actually, I'm very curious. Tammy, what do you think? I want to hear your opinion on this.
I think I think people generally, I think Singaporeans have this tendency to call out culture is a very real thing in Singapore. And while I think it's helpful, something that I learned recently is call in culture instead of call out. So call out has a more like shame and blame and angry thing. And I think okay, so there are a few layers here, right? One is that like if you are a relatively privileged person speaking to another privileged person, it's okay to be angry. You're not. I think it's not as acceptable for you to be super angry and riled up about these things because it doesn't necessarily affect you.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's not so privileged has the right to be angry, and I think that's something to acknowledge. So that's one thing. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I think I think we need to start learning how to, as a society and as a people, like learn how to call in people and influencers instead of calling them out. So instead of like slandering them and being like, you're cancelled, like you don't know anything, you know, like
Yeah.
why are you so immoral, like, you know, that kind of thing. Like there's no reason to
There's no value.
yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't help you. You just get angry.
It just
The
makes
other person
people
doesn't
feel
learn.
shitty.
Exactly. And then influencers end up getting to the point where they don't even want to talk about anything at all because
Yeah.
they're too scared, right? So that doesn't create a healthy culture of learning and growing. And the goal is to create a culture where everyone, especially influencers, are more able to address
Yes.
their position of privilege and to speak about them candidly and honestly and invite their people who follow them to do the same as well.
Yeah.
Okay, but there are some things that I agree, and because like recently I read an article about how like we are weirdly by being intolerant behavior we are also being intolerant. You can like
I understand. No,
Yeah.
actually, I totally agree with you because I feel that like what I mentioned, I think we mentioned this many times on our show, that if you want to tell somebody something, right, especially if it's painful, like the easiest way to do it is to make it in a way that people can process and make it in a way that people are willing to listen.
sell it like a market pitch.
Yeah. So like even though it's gonna be like, why must I do that? But people should already know. But the fact is, we live in a society where people are ignorant to certain things, and in order for people to be more, to be more aware of your problems and to be able to help out because they have the ability to, right?
Yeah.
You need to invite them in. You need to encourage them to see from your point of view, not shit on them for not being able to. Because for all you know, right, you may be shitting on somebody who is about to become a kind person, and then after that they don't dare to anymore. You know, and that's probably the worst outcome because like not only do you turn some potential help away, you're making a person who wanted to be a better person unable to, you know, and that is so unfair.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
unfair to yourself and unfair to the cause and unfair to whoever this person might be, because you must understand that like if let's say you know something more than someone else, right? The hardest thing for another person to say is they don't know. You know,
Yeah.
when they
To
want to
admit
know.
they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either they admit they're wrong or they admit they don't know. And sometimes admitting ignorance is something that is very difficult because you have to put your ego down. Now, if you put your ego down and then you don't know and then people shit on you, you're gonna be crushed. Right?
It just kills everything.
Yeah.
It
Will
just
you
kills
still be more? It's like, for example, you clean your room, but your mother still scold you for one little spot you missed, for example. Very shook, man. In fact, after that, right, you may become lazier. You don't want to clean anymore. Yeah, clean also no use. Right?
Okay, so why don't we talk about actually something that I've actually wanted to do an episode about the Okay Let's Go incident.
Okay, actually, I've seen this all over the news. I only know the headlines. I do not know the specifics. Maybe you want to tell me a little bit more.
Okay, to be fair, I never watched a podcast episode before.
I didn't.
So
I also didn't.
I
didn't bother watching the
only
podcast
listened to their apology episode.
Oh, okay.
which
I
thought
didn't
was-
even watch that. I didn't even know they
but
were a thing. I only know Alistair Pang.
Hey, thank you. I also only know that's Tammy also only know.
Okay, anyway, yeah.
So the whole reason why Okay Let's Go was this big thing that even President
Halima,
came
yeah.
up and said like, hey, stop this shit, right?
Yeah.
It's because people called them out. So in a weird way, it worked. Right? So like, are we advocating, like when we say do not call them out, in a weird way, is it wrong? Because they did and it worked. And now, because of that, there are 3 people who are doing a podcast now and who will be a lot more careful with what they say because shit went down, like shit hit the fan.
Actually, it's a very I feel that like, okay, maybe Tammy, you want to explain to us what do you mean by this call in culture instead?
I mean, okay, like I said, I think so tone policing is a very real thing, right? Like I think it's not first of all, I think it's important to understand that it's not the responsibility of someone who has been discriminated against or marginalized to have to make their activism palatable to you. Like,
Yeah.
you can't expect people who have had lived through that sort of experience to be calm and to be kind and explain. They don't owe you shit, right? Because they've been through it, and why would they have to explain and justify themselves just for you to understand something because you were in that position of privilege, right?
Yes.
And therefore, the if they decide to stand up and speak about these issues, then that's great, right?
Yes.
But we shouldn't be expecting them to be the ones who are doing that. So
Yes.
who should be having the conversation? It should be people who are in positions of privilege,
Yes.
relative privilege, right? To be speaking about these issues. And you know, I do think that, like, what happened with Okay Let's Go, I do think that was like that was anger, right? Like, that was anger that fueled, like, you know, them calling out the people who hosted the podcast. And that was fair, like, that was fine. I mean, they weren't, you know, you can't really say, like, why you're angry. I mean, like, these are real, like, from what I understand, like, women who were like upset with misogynistic remarks, right? And therefore, like, I think it's in that scenario, it's okay, like, and it's perfectly like respectable for them to be angry, and for that to be the way that drives an influencer to own up to their mistakes and to do something about it, right? But that is one incident, right? So on a normal day, like, how do we get influencers to, you know, speak about social issues? Like, do we call out or do we call in? So then the what calling in is like inviting them to a conversation, and, you know, explaining to them and talking to them, I guess. And it's very difficult, I guess, to have that conversation with an influencer if you're just a follower. So I do think it's important for influencer circles to be having that conversation, because I don't know how it works. Like, do influencers, like, speak to their followers? Like, do they have a relationship with their followers, or do they just...
I have no idea. Let's ask the
I
one
have no
influencer
idea.
here. You are the
I
only
am not.
influencer
What are you
here.
trying to say? No, but like I'm not. But like, if people DM me, I talk to them lah. What?
Amongst all three of us right here, you're like the most influencer.
I'm not a good representation, but like, yes, okay, I do talk to people, but like, I understand if you're like in the millions, for example, if you're Bill Gates, you can't answer every single DM. Probably someone manages your DM. But I agree, okay? I agree with your earlier statement, like what Tammy mentioned about how the people who have been marginalized, it's not their responsibility to educate the people who are privileged, right? Which is 100% true. Having to suffer through whatever struggles that you have had, right? And then still having to deal with teaching people who don't know is not something that is fair for these people. But at the same time, okay, I am because I am a super privileged person, okay? But the thing about it is that, like, having spoken to some of my friends and spoken to people who help me understand and help me overcome this understanding barrier, which is very hard, right, in the first place, right? So having come maybe I may not come a bit closer, I may have glimpsed and understand what's happening, right? I realized that there is truly a need, okay, for both sides to open their doors, okay, for people that are privileged like me to be willing to seek out and listen and have these kind of conversations and to just sit and listen and internalize, and for people who are marginalized, right, to share, because a lot of times, right, you all do not know how blinding privilege can be. We are for people like me, for example, right, maybe because recently I did a talk about race, for example. I only on the topic of race, right, I never realized how blinded I was by my own circumstance, that actually a lot of these things, right, I don't even know that I don't know, you know. And as a result of that, right, I was super appreciative that people could open this topic with me, because some of these things that I didn't even know could be a topic were things that people struggled with, you know. And then, like, I never realized that there was this side of things that may end up making someone else feel uncomfortable. And I'm pretty sure if you're anything like me, you don't want to do things that make people you care about uncomfortable, right? So as a result of that, I feel that the best way for any influencer or anybody for that matter, right, to address any social issues is to show people that the door is open and please walk through, you know, on both sides. And then as a result of that, right, once these type of conversations happen, the next logical step will be that these conversations and these problems will start to become front and center, start to become mainstream. And then as a result of that, once things become mainstream, things can be solved.
Yeah.
Right? Let me give you a very recent example of what I mean by this blinding, this privilege that may blind you, and then you don't even realize, even though you have good intentions. Okay? And this may be a controversial example, but I'm just gonna say it because this is my understanding. I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. Leave in the comments below, give us engagement. But do y'all
Write him in the
remember?
comments.
Do y'all remember that there's this minister that mentioned about migrant workers?
Migrant workers in the fields.
Migrant workers, right?
Mm.
And she mentioned in Parliament that she
Okay.
has not heard any migrant worker complain to her
Ask her for an apology.
about ask her for apology and stuff like that.
Which is just
I
thank
am
you.
very sure, okay, she's not being malicious.
But it sounded shitty.
There was absolutely no malice. But the thing about it is that
She was so privileged.
people, it's like it sounds terrible that we say that you're so privileged, right? But the thing is, that is the level that we are at, that we don't even understand, that we feel that like, how come you never tell me? Do you know that is you know this feeling of the like, what, you're suffering, how come you never tell me? That is the level of privilege you are at, that you cannot even see that someone is suffering. And I think this is where it becomes very important that if you're suffering, please tell me. That should be the conversation that people of privilege have. And then for those that are suffering, I encourage you to dare to have these conversations with people. And it's so much easier if both sides always show that their doors are open. If you're suffering, please tell me. If you're suffering, please tell me. That will always invite people who are suffering to talk to you.
Yeah.
And then for people who are suffering, if you're not out there thinking that everyone is your enemy, and then you're able to recognize the correct open doors, it's shitty, okay? But you have to choose the correct open doors, right? This is where the proper conversations can happen. You know? And then through that, we will strengthen the topic.
I do think that different people have different fights.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, I don't know so much about every other activism out there, but like for mental health, because that's my thing, right? Like for people who are suffering from anxiety, suffering from depression, any other mental health issues, right? I agree that, hey, like, just focus on yourself, focus on your health. You don't need to like worry about trying to raise awareness, or like worried about trying to like push people up, or like anything along those lines. Because the fact that you even have this shit to deal with is really like a big thing on your plate already.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the reason why I feel so much responsibility to do what I do. It's because I have suffered through it, and I am in a like fucking better place now.
Then
like,
that's great.
That's why I feel like that's my fight.
Correct.
And I think a lot of different people, you have to kind of like see like where does your fight stand.
Correct. So like you see, you raise a really good example here, which is when you talk about mental health, right? So you feel that as someone who has recovered from a situation that is not ideal, you want to be able to give people a voice for what has happened, right? But do you think your responsibility is bigger than those who are currently suffering?
I think it is.
Yes, and this is the point of it. You know, you cannot just say that, oh no, I understand this. That's why
I feel like I'm the bridge.
Yeah. So that, you know, this is an important attitude to have, right? As someone who is able to like understand this, blah, 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 then be the bridge.
Yeah. It's because, I understand both sides, right? Because I've been through anxiety. And I'm also well enough for people to, when they tell me things like, I don't think depression is real, or I don't think, I think anxious people are just weak. I'm at a point where I don't get hurt.
Yeah.
So, because like, I'll be able to keep
in that case, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it is your responsibility, right?
Yeah.
To level this playing field for people?
Yeah.
And this comes back to the topic that we're talking about.
But here's the thing, it's very weird.
Yeah.
I can think it's my responsibility.
Yes.
But I, for some reason, cannot put it on everyone else.
No, that is okay. That is true. Okay, because like once again, right? I also like this policy that I have within myself. That I must always remember the individual first before the other things.
Yeah.
So before you are a man or a woman, you are an individual. I don't make all these judgments on you because I don't want to forget that you are an individual and I don't know your struggles. And I don't know what you have and you don't. Right? And this is where this point about whether you expect things out of other people, whether it's fair or not, right? That's why it becomes a discussion, because as an individual, right, it's very easy to see that they have success in these parts, in the apparent parts, but who knows what are the other things that they may they may be underprivileged in, you know? And this is where the discussion is a little bit more, it gets a little bit more human lah, and also like, why you don't do this, why you don't do this, why you don't do this. And that's why I say that I feel that once again, okay, in order for true change to happen, right, it must come from both sides. So if you are in a position of privilege for a particular topic, like for example, as someone who has recovered, you feel like you have a responsibility as the bridge, right? It is your responsibility to keep that bridge open.
Yeah.
But just for that.
What I mean?
For those things that you have a ability and privilege in.
But for other topics, it's like not.
For other topics, right, it's not expected of you because firstly, for other topics that you might not be privileged in, right, it's very difficult for you to be the person that fights for it. Because most of the time, if you're underprivileged in something and then you're struggling, right, there is no power behind whatever you are lacking.
I don't know. I'm a bit uncomfortable with that idea though.
Okay, sure.
Because I kind of feel like one, like I think we are in the danger of like conflating a lot of activisms together, which might not be. Like I think mental health activism and anti-racist activism and environmental activism are completely different activisms, right? But also, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable with like drawing a binary between like someone who is privileged and someone who's not privileged, and someone who is an activist versus someone who's not an activist, right? Like, I think we have to acknowledge that it's not just, when you speak out about something, when you care about something, it doesn't necessarily make you an activist.
Yes.
And you don't have to fall on an activist or not activist on issues generally, right? It's not whether you choose to be an activist or not. It's whether you choose to know about these issues or not. And I think there's too much pressure on people to be like, if you care about this issue, you have to be loud and proud and talking about it all the time, right? But what activists, I think, and I'm not going to speak for all activists, but generally I do feel like the expectation on people is not for everybody to be an activist, right? Although that's ideal, right? That would be nice. But for everybody to be empathetic and for everyone to be listening and to be doing something actively about it. And it doesn't mean you have to be an activist, but you can take actions without being an activist, right? And like that's, for example, for issues like, donating for one, or listening. When it comes to like the fight on the anti-racist fight, right?
Yes.
That a lot of the work comes with listening to someone else and having that conversation, right? And then when with environmental activism, it's maybe like writing to your MP, right? And these things don't make you an activist. If everyone who did these things were an activist, then everybody would be an activist because everyone does something, right? In your capacity, whatever that is, right? So there shouldn't be a pressure for people to be like, oh yeah, I gotta speak about these issues and gotta know all these issues. But I do think the baseline is that you have to at least be open to listening and to be open to learning and to not. I think a lot of adults are trapped in this place where they feel like they have learned all they know about society.
Right.
Right. And therefore they are closed off to understanding where they might not have heard or they might not have learned about, right? And then therefore they don't want to be interested in all these things because then they think that like, I already know lah, or and there's so much stuff to learn about, like how I will not know everything. Like why do you expect me to care about all these things and talk about all these things? But it's not. The expectation is for you to just
listen.
Be aware and listen.
Yeah,
and then do something every now and then. Right.
And that's something that we always advocate for in every IMO episode. Like if you go and, I'm quite sure if you go and compile all the ending of our IMO episodes, half of it will probably end with let's be empathetic, let's listen.
Yeah. Actually this is a little bit enlightening for me. So I feel that like the right process for people in order to, how to say, make things better, right, will be first to listen and then empathize and then do whatever you can within your capacity.
Yeah.
It's just like that. And I think empathy is like, it's hard to come by.
It's hard. It's very difficult to be empathetic.
But you definitely have to go and listen first. Once you listen already, right, it's easier to understand people's perspective. Yeah. And I think it's very important that when you offer to listen, right, you don't offer to fix. You don't offer to explain. I feel that it is very, very important that when you offer to listen to someone's struggles, you must be there willing to have your mind changed. And I think that's very, very important. That every single time when we tell people to be empathetic, to listen, right, you must listen with the objective that you're gonna have your mind changed.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important.
And I mean we have 10 minutes left on this. So I just want to wrap it up a little bit. I know
Mm.
we didn't really talk much about the second topic, but the expectation thing seems to be something that's like capturing most of our attention.
Yeah.
I remember when Black Lives Matter thing happened, a lot of people actually DM me / commented.
Still happening if I'm not wrong. Now it's
I mean, like when it's the peak of
right.
its, like
Yeah.
craziness.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people DM me and a lot of people like commented, so like, hey, do a Black Lives Matters episode on IMO.
Mm.
And I remember asking Tammy like, I don't really want to do it.
Ah.
And it's not because
Because you don't care.
it's not because I don't care, because I do what like
Yeah.
I do care. It's just that what the hell do I know, right?
Yeah.
like I'm a Chinese dude in Singapore. Like I don't know shit. So like,
Mm.
and John probably doesn't know as much as I, or like as we know just as little.
I do not know enough
Yeah.
to comment on something sensitive like that, because I do not want to introduce things that I don't want for the audience. I don't want you to hear what we say in a without the right understanding,
Mm.
because that's not fair to the people that we are talking about, because we're talking about people who cannot defend themselves, who
Yeah.
cannot correct us,
Mm.
and that's not fair. So that's one of the reasons why we don't really want to talk about Black Lives Matters. But at the same time, okay, if you brought up the topic on Black Lives Matter and then you are DM Lester about it, right? I encourage you to think about racism in Singapore first, right? It's something that's a little bit closer to home. We live in a multicultural, multiracial country. I would say in terms of policies around the world, we are slightly better than a lot of countries, but we are still not a race utopia. Ask yourself, does racism still exist in Singapore? And if your answer is yes or no, right, think why.
Mm.
And then from there, open the topics with your friends. And then you will discover that actually there's a lot of these other things. And then after that, you ask, and then maybe you can even start to explore other things. Suddenly talk about race can lead to things like socioeconomic status. Do we have homeless people in Singapore? Do we have poverty in Singapore? Are you rich? Are you poor? When you have these type of conversations, that's when you start to be able to think. And like I mentioned, whenever you have these kind of conversations, go in with the intention of your mind being able to change,
And I think like, I mean, even okay, so I just want to preface that I am working on guests to bring on to talk about racism and talking about Black Lives Matter and all that.
Yeah.
In fact, I asked Tammy for a few contexts. So it's
Yeah.
not that we completely just we just want to ignore it. It's that we don't think we are like qualified to say much just amongst the two of us lah.
We don't want to give you the wrong insight lah, basically.
Yeah. And
you
I
can
think,
ask us about Nintendo Switch. That one we can give you on the spot. We tell you, okay. But like these are bigger issues.
yeah,
Right?
and I think the reason why I brought this up is that like I know this whole episode like, or like a lot of people, especially now, a lot of people are saying that like, oh, influencers, you are expected to do like talk about these issues.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you don't have to if you think you're not like qualified to, or like even if you like, or even if you do want to talk about it, there's a way to talk about it without like in a proper way if you don't know enough. So like for example, for me, for Black Lives Matter thing, we posted a post about it on community, and we also when the next episode came out, we actually talked about it in the comments as well. So it's not that we completely ignored it. And I think that's what influencers can do also. Like you can like I guess if you want to help out, it's not that you have to sit down and like go like, oh, denounce everything or like speak as if you are an expert on it, because you're not. So you don't have to pretend to be who you're not, but you just have to like do what you can.
In fact, I think it is extremely useful if you're a social media influencer to tell people on your platform, especially the people who follow you for you, right? To be the ones that approach you to talk about things that they may care about. And I think that's important because like a lot of times, okay, especially in what we call the media industry or social media, a lot of these followers and people that follow social media influencers are younger than these social media influencers, and will require some kind of it would be great, if someone who is in a more mature place is able to acknowledge their struggle and help them grow into a better society. And I think this is where it becomes really much more important. And I think this will put things into perspective better, because children are the future of our society, man.
I think this is a nice way to end it, but like before we end it, Tammy, do you have any final thoughts for this topic?
Well, I mean, I think practically speaking, I mean, I think like me a few months ago was a lot more aggressive about this whole like influencer thing. And I still maintain my stance that I do feel like influencers have to speak up about these issues. But I do think that after, learning, and all credits to everyone who has spoken about anti-racism work and the people who I follow who talk about these things. What I learned is that you don't always have to be speaking up in a way that you think is right. Like, I think it's important to step away from your ego and put it aside for a bit, and then decenter yourself from the conversation. There are ways to speak up about things without putting yourself in the center of it, and then you don't have to be in a position where you have to say like, oh, I don't know anything, or like it's not about you, right? The point is, it's not about when you want influencers to speak up about social issues. It's not about them per se. It's about the fact that they have a platform and that they're supposed to have these conversations, right? And so, how do we expect influencers to act? It's not to be like, oh, I know this or I don't know this. It's like no one cares. I don't care about whether you know or not. It's more like, you can speak up about social issues without centering yourself in that. You can amplify voices who are speaking about these issues, right? So
do what you can lah.
Yeah, instead of saying like, instead of saying and making it sound as if you're an expert on these issues, which like we have established, people are not experts on these issues, right? And you shouldn't be speaking over people who have actual lived experiences about these things, right?
Yes.
So look towards people who are already talking about these issues, there are so many in whatever activism space you're looking at. There's so many accounts and posts to repost and reshare. And as an influencer, all you need to do is just reshare that, and then maybe share a bit about what you feel afterwards at the end. And you don't have to do that immediately, right? I think the pressure is on influencers to speak up at the relevant time. So also, sometimes you just have to just reshare for now and then do the work behind the scenes. And then when you feel that you're qualified enough to have a decent sort of opinion on it, be honest and just be like, hey, I don't know everything, but here's what I learned, and I hope that you who is following me can also learn along with me, right? And I think that's where we all kind of have to be at a place of acceptance and understanding and like, care for like everyone around us, and not like blast influencers for saying the wrong thing immediately. Yeah, like I think it comes back to how you criticize them, right? But I also do think that sometimes influencers have a very like huge ego lah. Then every time someone criticizes them, they think it's about them. But usually it's not about you. Like no one's saying that you're a bad person and a good person. And like I say, you don't have to be obsessing over whether you're a good person or not, because that's not helpful.
Yes.
So it's really like when someone criticizes you, right? I do think influencers need to take a step back and to be like, okay, why am I responding in an angry way? Like, am I making this about me when it's not about me? Usually when people who are social justice warriors speak out about issues, it's not necessarily because of that person per se. It's because they just want these issues to be heard and seen, right? So
I think that's a nice way to end it, right?
Fantastic.
It's like almost dying with 30 seconds left.
30 seconds left. Okay, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Tammy, once again. And if you've got any questions, right, please leave it in the comments. Okay, we'll try our best to answer. I know these are big topics. Follow us on Instagram.
Yes, IG. Yes, follow us on Instagram.
IG, we're running out of time already. Okay,
Hey, bye.
bye.